Welcome to Rich Tribe. Let's get right into it. Because for decades, we've all been sold this very specific, undeniable version of the American dream, right? You go to school, you get a good job, and above absolutely everything else, you buy a house. But what if I told you that this traditional, unquestioned dream of home ownership might actually be the single biggest roadblock to building your generational wealth? Today in this explainer, we're putting feelings aside. We're going to look at the hard data, crunch the real numbers, and show you exactly how the wealthy actually build true, lasting net worth.
Okay, wait, Richard, hold on a second. Isn't renting literally just throwing money away? I mean, society drills into us from day one that if you rent, you get absolutely zero return on your money and you're just paying someone else's mortgage. Buying a home means you're building equity, so how is renting not a massive waste?
Section 1. The Homeownership Wealth Illusion. That perceived waste of rent, it's entirely based on the homeownership wealth illusion. It's where human emotion totally blurs the math. You see, behavioral economics splits us into two distinct categories. You have econs, who make perfectly rational, mathematically optimized decisions, and then you have humans, who let emotions completely cloud their financial reality. The societal pressure to buy a home plays right into our human emotions, making us ignore what owning a physical building actually costs us.
Right, exactly. I actually saw a great point on this recently. Leandra Peters was quoted in the Financial Times, and she hit the nail on the head. She said, "I don't look at a primary home as an investment. The stock market doesn't require me to deal with tenants, toilets, and termites." It really seems like a lot of millennials are intentionally rejecting homeownership to build liquid wealth in the stock market instead.
Spot on. And that beautifully brings us to the core psychological trap, the endowment effect. This is a behavioral bias where people value things way more highly simply because they own them. Humans buy homes and treat them as lifestyle assets. We take pride in owning the place, decorating it, showing it off to friends. But econs, they look at the raw data and see a financial drain. We constantly mistake a lifestyle choice for an optimal investment, and honestly, that leads to massively irrational financial decisions.
Section 2. Unmasking irrecoverable costs.
Okay, but if rent is supposedly the only way you quote-unquote lose money, what exactly is an irrecoverable cost when it comes to buying? To really understand that, you have to compare the true irrecoverable costs of both sides. People constantly compare their monthly rent to a monthly mortgage payment, and that is mathematically flawed. You have to compare the irrecoverable costs of renting against the irrecoverable costs of buying. For a renter, your only irrecoverable cost is your rent. That's it. But for a home buyer, your irrecoverable costs are this multi-headed monster. You've got property taxes, constant maintenance, homeowners association fees, all that mortgage interest paid directly to the bank, and the massive cost of stranded capital. And listen to me, none of that money is ever coming back to you. This also brilliantly highlights another major flaw. When you buy a house, you are pouring a massive chunk of your net worth into one single physical building. That brings immense geographic concentration risk. If the local economy tanks or property taxes suddenly spike, you are completely stuck. Plus, real estate is incredibly illiquid. If you suddenly need your cash, you can't just click a button to sell a few shares. It can take months of extreme stress to pull your money out of a house. Whoa, hold on. Looking at these numbers, up to 15% in transaction costs just for physical real estate, that's actually shocking.
It really is the silent wealth killer. When you buy and sell a property, you are getting hit from every angle, with agent commissions, up to 10% in stamp duties or taxes depending on where you live, legal fees, closing costs. You can literally wipe out 15% of your capital just moving the asset from one person to another. Meanwhile, stocks cost you roughly 1% to 1.5% to trade, and they offer intraday liquidity with absolutely zero maintenance costs.
Section 3. The opportunity cost trap. Now, we haven't even touched the most dangerous hidden cost of all. Financial analyst Ben Felix calls it the opportunity cost trap. This is the wealth you are not making because your money is buried inside drywall and concrete.
Okay, that's getting a bit abstract for me. Can you give us a real-world example of how this actually plays out?
Absolutely. Let's look at an actual analysis of buying a $2.2 million apartment in Switzerland. To even get that mortgage, you need a 20% cash deposit. That is $400,000 of your hard-earned equity completely stuck in the property. Now, if you took that exact same $400,000 and just left it in the S&P 500, which historically returns about 10% annualized, you would earn $40,000 a year. That $40,000 is literally enough to fully cover your rent for the entire year, completely passively, without taking on $1.6 million in suffocating bank debt.
Section 4. Stocks versus real estate. Okay, I hear the math on the deposit, but real estate is a hard asset. Doesn't appreciation eventually beat the stock market over the long term?
Honestly, that is the ultimate myth. Let's look at the hard historical data. Between 1987 and 2006, the S&P 500 delivered an annual return of 10.8%. In that exact same period, the S&P/Case-Shiller U.S. Home Price Index delivered just 5.8%. Historically speaking, stocks have nearly doubled the annual return of physical real estate.
And here's exactly why that matters. Compounding. If we take our $100 investment over that same time frame, in the housing index, it grew to $302. But in the S&P 500, it compounded massively to $486. When you rent and invest the difference in equities, the passive compounding of the stock market does all the heavy lifting for your net worth. No physical labor required.
Section 5. The 10-year condo ROI experiment.
Okay, I totally get it for a primary home. But what about buying a cheap rental property? Isn't being a landlord the ultimate wealth hack everyone talks about? Well, let's look at a fantastic real-world case study for exactly that. A couple tracked their ROI on a Florida condo over a solid 10 years. On the surface, it looks like a slam dunk. They bought it incredibly cheap for $71,000. Over a decade, it generated $142,400 in gross rental income and saved rent. Finally, they sold it for over $127,000. That is an above-average 6% yearly appreciation. Seems like a perfectly profitable decade of ownership, right?
Wait, looking at these steps, those operating expenses are brutal. Over $45,000 just in condo association dues alone.
Exactly. Operating expenses silently devour your profits. Add in over $17,000 in property taxes and another $12,000 for superficial renovations and repairs like carpets and vanities. When you total it all up, $83,670 of their hard-earned rental income was instantly drained by the irrecoverable costs of just maintaining the property.
And this brings us to the final verdict of their 10-year experiment. Even with an incredibly cheap property, great tenants, and absolutely zero major disasters, the math proved that simply renting and investing that original $71,000 into a stock market index fund would have made them richer. And the best part? They would have done it entirely passively, without ever fixing a toilet or writing up a single lease agreement.
All right, before I show you the ultimate framework to use renting to build massive wealth, make sure you subscribe to Rich Tribe channel, like, comment, and share this explainer so we can keep bringing you the financial truth they definitely don't teach you in school.
Section 6. Renting to build wealth.
All right, Richard, you've completely torn down the traditional narrative here. What is the actual millionaire strategy we should be using instead? Here's the framework. I call it the wealthy renter strategy. First, you treat rent for what it actually is, a fixed, predictable cost that strictly caps your housing liability. If the roof caves in, your landlord pays, not you. Second, you take that massive 20% down payment you've been saving up and you aggressively funnel it into globally diversified, low-cost ETFs. This completely eliminates your geographic concentration risk. And hey, if you still really want real estate in your portfolio, buy REITs, real estate investment trusts. They historically average a 9.9% annual return. They require absolute zero maintenance, and they keep your wealth highly liquid, meaning you can buy and sell in seconds right from your phone.
So I want to leave you with this final, absolutely crucial question to think about. Now that you've seen the real math behind these irrecoverable costs, will you let the societal illusion of homeownership steal your generational wealth? It's time to rethink your net worth allocation, break free from these traditional financial myths, and start letting your money truly work for you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.